Welcome back to MSP After Hours. As you can see on the screen, today's going to be completely different than anything I've ever done. Normally, I have a really quick script I go through to talk about a very specific topic with as few minutes as possible. Today, we're going to bust this all to pieces. So if you aren't aware, All Things MSP is a podcast that's been going on for quite a while. I only have over 100 episodes, maybe 150 episodes. But Justin and Eric go through quite a bit of details on All Things MSP, which is what a great name. And I just wanted to share a little bit extra on top of what they have laid out for pricing. So this is going to be really more of a reaction video. We're going to listen to it in its entirety, and then I'm going to provide a little bit of feedback on my perspective to hopefully at least enrich a little bit of this conversation. But they did an amazing job. It's something you definitely need to listen to. So let's just get started.
Topic, because this is one of the most popular topics among MSPs and maybe one of the most controversial.
So we're going to start a fight today. Eric and I decided that we're going to get into a marital tiff over pricing, because everyone has their own way of looking at this. You know, we can look back at Carl Palachuk's MSP in a month when it first came out and be like, nope, that's the way to do it. We can look at it per device, per user, per company, per project, per endpoint times 5. Like, there's too many ways to do this. And so Eric and I are going to get into a fight, and I promise you, mommy and daddy will be okay. But the truth of the matter is, I guarantee you by the end of this conversation, we're not going to have a solution for anyone, because there is no right answer here. You can hang up, you can stop listening now, but don't.
But they may find the right answer for them. And I think that's the point.
Exactly.
So he is absolutely right. There are so many ways to do this. And while there isn't per se a right answer, there is one that I think is core to every pricing model that should be allowed in the MSP space. And that is this: no matter how you choose to price, for every expense that you have to deliver the services that you are delivering, you need to generate revenue in return. If you don't have that core premise, you 100% have the wrong model. And we'll dig into this deeper as they do.
So let's just dive right into this one. Okay. I am an MSP. My name is Justin. Hi, Justin.
And a little bit for you to know about Justin. I don't know many of these. He is the only one that I know that is a MSP focused solely on Macs. That's all he does. So if you need someone, if you have the need for help in that space, he's the guy you need to talk to.
Charge per device and per user and per site. So we have per device for like monthly maintenance. And as per our services guide written by the amazing robotic Brad Gross, by the way, have you seen his Facebook post with him as like the Terminator?
Yes.
Brad,
that's awesome.
You're a lawyer, dude. Our per device is like includes MDM, software updates, making sure the machine's okay, the health, whatever. Because remember, it's a maintenance plan. Our per user is for things like our email backup or email protection, because we can't charge per device because you have more emails than you do people. And then per site are things like dark web scanning for your domain and phishing training.
What Justin just described is incredibly important. And what he has done is he's understood, he's been doing this for a while, but he understands that there are certain prices that are associated to users. There are certain prices that are associated to workstations. And then you also have pricing that is associated maybe to the whole organization, or maybe it's a group of users, or maybe, as you said, it's phishing training, and maybe it's 1 to 20 users or something along those lines. And you can't break that down by individual, so you use that as a site fee. That is incredibly important, and it is an amazing way to ensure that, again, every dollar you spend for services, you get revenue back,
depending on the phishing training tool that you're using.
Okay.
Now, our PSA doesn't allow us to literally have like headers for those things, but that is how we price it out on the invoice. I would love for to have per device, per user, per site pricing in the invoice.
Okay.
But our PSA doesn't allow for that. So we just have it listed as monthly, and then we just have all the items as line items underneath it.
I think that's a great idea. Line items explaining in clear text what you're delivering is amazing. I am not opposed to having a per user or per workstation perspective, but I would say I would stop at the pricing side. So you want to formulate your cost or your price to your client, but you want to have that shown as a total line item or as a total cost and not a per user or per workstation line item price. So as long as you are itemizing, itemize all you want to on the invoice. Do not itemize on price. Oftentimes when people see itemized prices, they think, hey, I can take that off, or I can ask to have this removed or that removed. This isn't a menu. You should not be offering menu style opportunities for your clients. So in this situation, just make sure you only have one price if you can, if your PSA allows it.
The argument here is that a lot of people they want to pick one. I'm either going to do per device or per user pricing, or they want to go, I'm going to do per user pricing and I'm going to give everybody the ability to have 2 devices. But if someone has a 3rd device, I'm going to charge them for an extra user. Like, it gets weird.
It's not just weird, it's wrong. And this is totally wrong. Why? So if you think that you have a user and then you're going to build in the cost of 2 workstations. If you have a 5 user company with 5 workstations, you have just dramatically overcharged them. Now you might win it, but in comparison to someone else who's pricing more appropriately, you're going to be so expensive, you're going to lose the deal. Like it is insane. And if you finally say, well, I'm going to cover them for 2, but on the 3rd one, I'm going to charge them separate, you're already charging separate. So just charge them separately. You have different device expenses and you have different user expenses. Put them in buckets and sell them like that. And you will be, it's far easier to manage as well.
And I still feel like I've been doing pricing the same way I've been doing pricing since before I even started the company, when I worked for another company back in 2004. Right? Like, because we were $100 per device and it was just the same ish included. Like, are we doing it wrong? Is there more money to be made in another modality? Is it really the difference between quote unquote maintenance versus quote unquote work, quote unquote projects? What's included in an all you can eat? Is it unlimited labor hours? Is it better not to? I have friends who don't do unlimited labor hours and they have a lower per device pricing and then they charge hourly on top of that.
When you hear that, and you probably know this already, but if you are looking at starting an MSP, the most expensive thing you have is time. Like it is the most expensive thing that cost your MSP. And so what Justin is speaking there is there are people that just lower that threshold. They just lower the amount that's involved. The price is cheaper on your managed services, but you're then billing. And so you have inconsistent bills because somebody might use more one month than the other. And the other downstream effect that a lot of people don't think about is when you charge people by the hour, they're less likely to call you, which is not always a bad thing, but they're less likely to call you for things they need to call you about because they're afraid to increase their bill.
There's too many I think there's too many variants to MSP pricing models. That's your turn.
Okay. There's a lot there.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
And here's where I think a lot of MSPs kind of by default go, and that is they want to be fair about their pricing to their clients. And the most accurate way, I guess I would say it, to be fair, is to itemize everything, right? Because then the customer, the client, is only paying for what they use. The problem is keeping up with that is incredibly difficult. And it can become very confusing for the client. And so what we've tried to do, I think, as an industry has evolved to try and make it easier on the client, but also still find one thing, a post that we can tie to, whether it's per user, per device, or whatever, to bundle everything else into. So if they have 20 people, they're getting charged $20 or well, $100 times 20 people, whatever it is, and that's the service.
When yeah, nothing Eric says is inaccurate. I think there can be debates on how challenging itemization is. We don't want to itemize in the sense that we get down to selling widgets, but we need to standardize how we create packages so it makes it easier to deliver. For every workstation, they get these things. For every user, they get these things. And we create a standard for that user or workstation server, whatever it is. And then in our PSA, we can make sure those numbers always match. It is not super complicated. And there are some PSAs, actually some that are less expensive, that have the bundling capabilities built in, and you can lay in there the antiviruses and whatever else you've got, web content filters or whatever, and so that you have one element that you change and it adjusts all of those. So it can be complicated, but it oftentimes that's an operational thing, not so much an MSP thing. It's just the operational side of how you manage it. And you kind of want to work backwards. You definitely want to make it easier. Oftentimes MSP owners try to overcomplicate things, and that makes things bad. And sometimes MSP owners try to simplify things, and that makes things bad too. You just got to find what works for you and what level of effort you are willing to apply. But you definitely want to simplify the accounting approach to the best of your ability, because it helps you ensure that you actually have accurate and
Right.
appropriate billing.
The problem is, in order to make sure that you play it safe and protect your margins, you have to build a lot into that they may or may not be consuming. And some people may have a problem with that.
That is a very great segue into the idea behind when you deliver managed services. You already have a structure. You should already have a structure for the deliverables in which you are providing. Let's say, for example, you offer some sort of email security, but when you onboard a client, they are already paying, and maybe they're already in an annual contract with Microsoft for Defender for Office 365. Well, they already have one. They're not going to want to pay for yours. Well, as an MSP, your standard should be, look, this is our standard. This is our services. This is what we deliver. We can have a conversation and potentially agree to end up using Defender for Office 365, but our service is included, and we charge for it because it's built in. It's not something that we separate out. We have never had a client ever that's had a problem with that, but we had that conversation on the front side. On the opposite side of that too is Defender for Office 365 isn't my favorite product, and even as well as you can, as much as you can put into it, it still isn't, in our opinion, the greatest. And so something ends up happening, and they end up switching to ours, and there's no cost associated because it's already included.
And I have gotten myself over that. Like, I now understand that to provide the best service, the best experience to the client, I have to over include. And yes, does that mean I make more money sometimes? Absolutely. That's exactly what that.
I really wouldn't call it over include. I would call it setting the expectation for the deliverables that you are going to deliver. If you are a cybersecurity focused organization slash MSP, if you're a cybersecurity focused MSP, you should have expectations for what the organizations you are seeking to do business with need. You shouldn't be selling everyone CMMC level compliance requirements and solutions and stuff. But there is a baseline that every organization, I don't care what you are, who you are, need. And that's at least what you should be delivering.
But you have to have the margin in there to know that you can always create the experience.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No. It does, because, you know, I know we talked about this where like PCMSPs race to the bottom because it's a commodity, but like there's only so low you can go because you have your cogs involved, right? Then there's some MSPs who literally line item, like you said, line item out everything on the customer's thing and their bills. Like when I get customers who come to me from a PCMSP who's taking care of a Mac shop, which don't, but like they always send me their contracts, and their contracts are like the page that has all the pricing is so convoluted. Like it's almost like it's like obscure. It's security through obscurity, right? Like you're keeping the customer by like not letting them understand what they're paying for by like making these super complicated.
I cannot tell you how honest that is. We see it all the time. We get invoices when we're looking to take on a client, and they use random words to try to sound like it's some big thing that this service they're delivering when it's not. It is hard to comprehend. It is hard to understand. We don't pay a whole lot of attention to them. We just kind of look over them. They do not change the idea behind what we deliver and how we deliver it. We just take it as extra information.
Components. And so we like it gets messy that way. Like I don't want to overdo the bill, right? In terms of like so many lines. I think the most complicated bill I have is I have a client right now who has, you're not going to like this, they have multiple lines for a particular product that I have to pay by when I have to buy the users, and I have to buy the space, and I have to buy the security tool, and I have to buy space in that security tool. And so there's like 6 lines on their bill for all of that, because that's the way I'm billed, right? And so then the other
What a great point. You should be billing like you are billed. That is as simple as it can possibly be.
part of this is also like, do you price based on that? Can you price based on the business needs? Because like years ago, oh my God, how this was 2016, 2017. I met with somebody. I flew them up from Texas and we did like a business meeting here. It was like a coach of some sort. And I've told this story on the show before, where like we were at one of my clients' offices. We were using their conference room, and he had asked me how much we were charging that customer. And at the time, I think we were charging the customer $125 a device. And they had 30 devices. So do the math, right? 125 times 30, $37.50 a month. He goes, that computer that person's on right there, if that computer stops working, will the company here lose more money than $37.50 a day, an hour, a week, or whatever? Like how much money is the company going to lose? And I was like, I don't know. They can probably lose argumentatively $10,000 because that employee is worth $10,000, doing $10,000 worth of work a day. He goes, cool. Why are you not billing them $10,000 a month? I'm like, because they're not going to see it that way.
There is a sense of understanding that value absolutely matters. The value of what you've helped them with, incredibly important. But let's take for an example, let's say you have a FIDO2 solution that you can get, and I literally know you can do this. You can get a software-based FIDO solution for $2, and that solution is going to protect the token when there is the risk of that token compromise. Let's say someone did compromise the token and it cost that organization $50,000. Does that mean that a $2 tool should be charged to them $50,000? No. But it's also like life insurance. You don't pay $1 million a year to have $1 million life insurance policy. So there is a value generation that is associated higher than the cost of some tools, and sometimes it's lower than the cost of some tools. But it is a really good point.
But they will if their stuff stops working and that employee goes dormant.
Right. So like he wasn't wrong, and we're talking about 9 years ago, and we're still not doing it that way. because it's hard to articulate that to a customer, because I think also, and this is a topic for a different show, what does it mean to be an MSP, right? Like, what does it mean to be like,
Well, yeah.
it's a monthly bill and what's included, and it's a maintenance thing. So when you get a new computer, we add that, and then we do this thing and that thing and that thing. And again, back to obscurity through confusion through invoicing.
Well, I think that you kind of have to back this up to what business model are you actually operating on, right? Because we call it managed services, but people who are still break fix call themselves managed services.
Just because
right?
they have recurring revenue.
Right, because they have recurring revenue. And so you really got to decide, are you just doing outsourced IT? Are you just doing some break fix with some preventative like security tools and backup? Are you offering the entire enchilada where you are their IT department, right? And you're charging them a flat fee per month to be their IT department. Those are wildly different and all have to be priced differently. That's why there is no one answer to this. Now, I do want to back up a second because you started using some words and some acronyms like COGS, which is cost of goods sold, and make sure that everybody understands the relationship. You have these costs, okay, that absolutely have to be covered. Now you have hard costs like your RMM tool, your security tool, stuff like that. You know the expense per user, per device, whatever it is. So that's easy to calculate. Then if you're throwing in, say, help desk, now you've got this variable, weemy, wimey, kind of
your
number out
labor
there
costs. These are
that you've got to add the labor cost to your monthly price.
Right.
And then you have your profit margin. And a lot of people kind of skip over that profit margin piece, unfortunately.
Because wait, Alan, I don't mean to interrupt, but in your, what you're talking about here is that the labor cost, you're talking about the cost of the employees that you hire at your company, right?
Yes.
You have the software, you have whatever your employees cost per hour or per month, times however many tickets that company is opening, and then your profit on top of that. That is a hard calculation to figure out, though.
Right. And that profit,
I think if we focus on just the ticket, I think that's where we get really complicated. Here's what you should do. I'll just make this as simple as I possibly can. You have an hourly rate associated with every client or every staff member. Let's just talk about a single tech. Let's say you have one tech, and that one tech can handle a certain amount of devices. But in order to know that, you got to know how much time on average per month does a workstation require. And so a really good kind of starting point is, let's call it 30 minutes. So to charge time, support time, help desk time on a device, you need to associate 30 minutes of expense and 30 minutes of profit on that particular device. So let's just say you are $30 for a half hour. Let's say that's just what your tech one makes. It's silly, but let's just staying with me. If it's $30 per half hour, that's the cost per workstation and support time. Then you take that $30 and you create your margin, whatever you mark that up, so that the company makes money off of it too. That's the only way that really, it's the largest expense you have, and it's the largest profit place you have too, because you're going to multiply. The only way you can make more money is to multiply time. And when you have more staff members that are making more money, then they're making you more money. So your margin's on top of that. And then that is built into that workstation. And that the amount of time that you believe for a user is built into that user. At that point, though, you've created this baseline where you think it's 30 minutes or a half hour per. Then you want to monitor how much time each workstation, if you can, if your tools allow you to monitor how much time is being spent on the user on average per company and how much time is spent on the per workstation per company. And then you're going to adjust that accordingly. And as long as you are 30 minutes or less, you're making a lot of money. If it's more than 30 minutes, then you're actually losing money. I cover that in one of my books. It's called Profit by Time. I'm not telling you to go out and get it, but it does cover that in pretty good detail.
The way has to include overhead. So you got to know what your overhead number is as well.
Right.
Or at least your target overhead. I mean, you can figure it out. It's not that complicated. But it changes based on the number of clients you have, because it's your overhead, which is typically a relatively fixed number, divided by the number of clients is the share per client. So it's a hard number to calculate, but if anybody needs help with that,
I'm not sure what Eric is talking about here, and I'm hoping that it's not about like the mortgage or the lease payment that you have. You choosing to either run your MSP from home or choosing to use, some high-rise expensive building because that's what you chose to do shouldn't really be an expense to the client per se. We in our MSP, we have a strong belief that things like that are really operational things and they should come out of the profit. You should be making enough money off of the profit that it covers that without any problems. SPs can be highly, highly, highly profitable, but they just have to be built well from the structure of pricing and obviously ensuring that they have clients that they're pretty efficient with. That makes a big difference. And then we don't do utilities built in or things of that nature. We price PSAs and the RMN, and all of those types of tools are considered part of it, because without that need for that business, we wouldn't have that. But the building and those types of overheads are not ever considered as part of the managed services fees, because really that's almost somewhat not fair to the
I mean,
client.
obviously, Justin and I would be willing to help. But those are the things you have to consider to make sure that you have enough profit at the end for you personally as the business owner, but also to invest back into the business to grow.
No question. That is 100% for sure. And that starts with making sure that your margins are accurate on your current services, period. When you do that appropriately, you'll have plenty of money to cover all of those things and to build back into your business. Um, it it really there's a cause and effect, and the cause is undercharging has an effect that you can't grow your business, or you can't get the things that you need, or you can't pay your bills. So the core cause is correct pricing, or pricing that ensures that every dollar that's expense comes back with a bunch of buddies. Several bunches of bunches.
Yeah. See, there's a lot of things. This all came up because you and I found this LinkedIn post from Jeffrey Newton of MSP Insider, right? And he was talking about, why do you price like this? And the owner was like, this is how you price managed services. He goes, who told you that? And then they said a name, and then he followed up with, this is the way it's always been done, right? And I don't know what Jeffrey was attempting to get to here, but he's like, when you call yourself an MSP and use the same per seat model, list the same line items, you turn your deal into a spreadsheet fight. 125 versus 250 per seat, you lose, because the buyer can't see any difference, right? So if a buyer is looking at your company versus someone else, they're trying to compare, apples to apples. Almost nothing in MSP pricing points to real outcomes. No clear ties to productivity, risk, or growth. No link to revenue per employee. No link to client lifetime value. You can change that. Package a minimum, anchor to impact. Make your pricing a pattern break, not a copy paste. What he's saying here is, you want to do value-based pricing. But I think that the majority of MSPs, and I'm going to offend people, we are incapable of doing that for our customers, because the customer looks at us as a sunk cost. IT doesn't make money. IT can increase productivity by ensuring your emails work and you're not getting phished and you're not spending $1,500 in Google.
I would almost say maintain productivity. That's very
gift
common.
cards, fine. But I've heard this a lot, and no, not to throw shade on Jeffrey Newton here. So many people that want to sell services to MSPs say the same thing. Sell on value-based outcomes. Sell on productivity. How?
I love this. Yes. Yes. It it is really hard. How do you define that value structure? And I understand the context. And there are people in the MSP group, one in particular talks about this all the time. You got to sell on value, and that is true. But the perceived value is oftentimes really hard to show. At the end of the day, if you are being compared to another MSP, if you have a client that's comparing you to another MSP, they're looking for someone else. You aren't serving them as well as you think you might be. That's a bigger topic. You need to be serving fairly. You need to be over delivering, under um, I can't remember what the word is, but you need to over deliver what your services are, and above and beyond, make them as happy as you possibly can. But when we start talking about value, it's is really, really complicated. Uh, Great point.
Because the company's not managing the company itself. My clients
Yeah.
aren't calculating productivity now.
Right. And that is a problem, right? Is that productivity is probably the hardest number to nail down because it's going to vary by employee. There's too many variables involved in it. So the productivity value is a very hard number to come about.
And then you add AI to it. Productivity is really, really complicated.
Yeah.
But a lot of this also stems to how you do business, right? If you are just delivering outsourced IT, if you're just their IT department, you probably are pretty much a sunk cost because you are just maintaining a level of productivity. You
And
are
that's
not adding value to the business.
and I think that's
Yeah.
90 to 95% of MSPs right now.
I think it is the majority. I don't know if I would call it that high, but I think it is absolutely the majority because that's where we've come from
Right.
and what we evolved to probably in the last 10 years.
And it's just been adding more stuff to keep that baseline.
Right.
Yeah.
What we've done is we have filled the CIO role for years, for probably more than a decade. What's happened though is technology has become a lot more transformative to the business than just the IT department. And what's happened is a lot of MSPs have not transitioned into the CTO role that now does add value to the business because it allows the business to do things they weren't doing before, leveraging technology.
I agree. I think the easiest example here is, talking about AI, obviously, to like help them leverage. Like I literally had a call with a client yesterday. They're a design firm. They make websites for a particular industry. And we're already engaged with our cybersecurity firm to do like AI policies, like corporate policy, acceptable use policy, whatever. And they wanted to have an AI that they can use internally so they can do certain things. And we discussed them using ChatGPT versus spinning up their own LLM or whatever. And then I was like, by the way, have you guys seen Replit? And they were like, no. And I showed them Replit and I showed them how I could make a website. And so for the listeners, I showed Eric this on I think last week or something.
Last week's episode.
I don't remember if we were recording when I did it, but I showed him and I built an All Things MSP website just by giving it like a link to the podcast and a link to the Facebook page. And it made like a solid website for us. And I showed this to this, like, they're basically web designers. And I was like, I could put you out of business with this one website. But like, I was like, are you including this in your thing? Because you have to learn how to use this. And like, then we kind of started breaking down some of the technology. But that's a game changer for them. I've now increased their productivity. How do I charge for just sharing my knowledge? Right.
Such a great point. And this is something both Justin and Eric are discussing. How do you, when you are the go-to, how do you know when your clients come to you and they ask you about a particular way to do something, or you're just having a conversation, and as Justin says, we're talking about websites, and like, have you seen this website where it'll build your website for you? Like, how do you make money off of that? and I'm a bit on the fence. I believe that we have we have ingrained ourselves in our client's organization. We want to be the go-to that they come to us and ask us questions because we don't want to do any of the shadow whatever it is, whether it's shadow AI, shadow IT, whatever, where they do things without thinking about the ramifications or the security concerns. But we also don't want to be like, well, every time you have a conversation with us, we got to bill you. So I think the real opportunity, if we are doing things that are a little bit more complicated, as we just talk about them being a project and we make something more out of it, or we can have another line item in it that says something like VCIO light or whatever, and we have some sort of formula based upon the cost of that person, whether it's you or one of your staff members, the margin on top of it, and you give them 3 or 4 hours a month for that type of thing, and you just structure the standard across the board. Every month they pay it. Some months are going to be 6 or 8 hours, and others they may be 5 minutes or 10 minutes. But that's a way that you can incorporate the value. You can make your agreements consistent, the pricing consistent, but still get money for your expertise, because there is absolutely expertise. This goes even much further than that. I mean, think about the idea of, someone who's really good at something takes half amount of time. And if they're billing the half amount of time as someone who's not really good, you're actually losing money because you're not billing for as much. So just, if you want to cover for cost for CTO or VCIO services, put a line item in there and figure out an idea. Make sure that you have the capacity to plan or to evaluate how much time you are giving each company, so that then you can adjust that as you move forward to make sure you have a more accurate number where you are fairly charging them, but they're also fairly receiving value.
How do you charge for, and this becomes almost like the owner of the IT company, the owner of the MSP in this regard, is like a business coach. Like, I go around, I tell people I'm a business coach. What does that mean? Well, I help other MSPs grow, or I help you through your problems or whatever. That makes sense. But for me to be like a generic business coach because I understand technology, to go to a design company to be like, by the way, have you seen this one AI thing that I learned about from someone else? Doesn't really, in my mind, doesn't, like, I can't go to them and be like, I taught you how to do your jobs faster. I want 5% of every deal moving forward. Like, that doesn't fly.
I think if you are more intentional about it and they understand that's how they're engaging with you, I think it absolutely does. I mean, if you come in and bring them a piece of technology that makes their business better, you are adding value to that business. And if that is your role, which, by the way, you have to define that as your role in your engagement.
Yep. And you have to define a price out of that, though, I think, in the engagement as well.
Yes.
Part of it has to be in your original engagement. Like, but do MSPs have I can't think of another word here, have the cojones to ask that customer point blank for a percentage of productivity if and when I bring you tools to make your job better?
I think it's hard to put a number around that.
Well, there's a problem.
But it's kind of like you've got the commoditized piece that you can itemize, right? Sure. And now we're talking about a completely different piece, which is why it's been hard for MSPs to marry these two things together into a new managed package that includes CTO services. I think that's where it becomes like a consulting fee, right? Mm. You have an ongoing consulting fee that you're charging them because you are constantly on the lookout for new technologies that will enhance their business. That's what they're paying you for, is for you to be the technology expert with your finger on the pulse to be able to bring them these things. So now, it's up to you whether you can or not.
So, well, there's the problem, right? So is that so a line item is maintenance of computers, and you're going to have another line item that says fractional CTO services, $1,000 a month, whether I bring you something or not? Who the hell would find it?
I wouldn't. I would have it all in a single per seat price personally.
Okay, so if it's on, so if you have fractional CTO services in the per seat pricing, that's then you don't have to do anything, and you're still going to make the money.
Correct.
So
it's up to, that's what I meant. It's up to you to actually do the work.
Right, but why would I do, if I'm going to get paid anyway, why would I do the work?
Because eventually they are going to realize that you're not bringing them anything new and you won't get renewed.
This is a really complicated conversation, or part of this conversation. I do believe that there's a balance. As I mentioned earlier, there are things that we should just be able to provide to our clients when they ask us questions, and it shouldn't cost them a penny. Really, I do it all the time. To me, it's a value add. It's building more of a stronger relationship. They can trust me. They know that they're not going to line item. They're not going to get an expense for that. This conversation earlier was about, but you've got to make sure that you say it on the front end. So, if your relationship with a particular client is this is all you do, this makes perfect sense. If it is not, if it is an MSP client, you can bake in time. You can do it however you want to. You can put it under the per user, you can put it under the per workstation, but again, here we are, we're trying to kind of hide certain costs. But sometimes too, it's about just giving it. Like, you don't have to charge for that type of stuff. Like, I just like to help people. And it's kind of why I think most of us are in the space we're in, but we want to make a fair, we want to make fair revenue for the effort and the value that we're generating. So there are a number of ways to do it. If you're on the more profitable side, 80% margins on MSPs, like, you're making money. Like, there's a point where you go, what's too greedy? But at the same time, if you are generating an exceptional amount of value, then you can probably raise your rates and cover it that way. But I think, like, I don't want to get too deep into this, in the sense that when you're talking about value generation, when it comes to offering solutions to something maybe that you don't even serve, sometimes it's just part of the deal. Like, you want to be the people that they come to for everything. And then when you start itemizing or charging them for that, outside of having something structured in your agreement that, hey, we do this because we cover our time, when we're more of consulting on what ways you can do things, we cover this in the agreement, cool. But to go back to them and start charging them every time it's going to shut down the flow of that conversation, because they're going to get tired of paying for it no matter what.
Potentially. I'm not fighting, like, I get what you're saying, but I'm saying, like, this is kind of the core crux of the problem, right?
Well, we told them we were going to fight about this, so they shouldn't be surprised.
They shouldn't be surprised. But, like, this is kind of the crux of the problem, because how can I prove, if I come up with one good idea every 6 months, is that worth the extra $50 per seat I'm adding for fractional CTO services?
I think if you're doing your due diligence, you should be presenting them with more than that. I think if you are, because part of that here, look, if I was to put this together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I already said I'm just going to add it as part of the per user pricing. But part of that is going to be every month, every quarter, depends on how fast their industry moves, with technology. I am going to do some due diligence work, some research into new technologies affecting their specific industry. And then I'm going to report out at dirty word QBR, or whatever my meeting cadence is with them. Because if you don't want to call them QBRs, and I understand, a lot of people have nervous and allergic reactions to that word, or that acronym, but you should still be having a regular cadence of meetings, especially with your top clients. And this should be a line item on the agenda of those meetings, is what new technology has come out in the last month, 3 months, 6 months, that affect their industry that we should be looking into.
Okay, so by adding a cadence call, there's the value prop, I think, also, because a lot of MSPs don't necessarily have cadence calls with all of their customers, let alone the top 5, right? I think it's important. I agree with you to have these calls. I'm not denying that. I think it's important to have the cadence calls. And typically when we have a client that's of a certain value amount or higher, we add it as a line item in their services on the per user, says quarterly or monthly or whatever, cadence calls.
We have cadence calls every month. You have to build a relationship with your clients, and you cannot do that talking to them on a quarterly basis. I think QBRs are the most ridiculous idea on the planet. It made sense years ago when technology didn't really move that fast. Today, 3 months is an insane amount of time in technology, and you probably hear the passion in my voice. Is not Quarterly is never okay. You got to be talking to your clients every month at a minimum, just checking in to make sure that they are okay. As for the idea of, digging into research for that particular, in that particular industry, I think that is a great idea if you are a sole industry company. So if your MSP only deals with construction, I think that's a great idea. But if you are in multiple industries, which I highly believe, I believe with my whole heart you should be, we learned from COVID that, if you only focus on restaurants, and COVID hit, they all shut down, and many of those businesses, I assume, closed or had to figure out another way to make money. So I think it's far more complicated. I think it sounds great. I think it's far more complicated when you have maybe 6 or 8 or 10 industries to be able to do that same level of thing. Just something to think
So
about.
we're already doing that for our clients that are of a particular dollar amount or higher, right? My clients that are paying me $1,000, $2,000 a month are not getting a cadence call because they're not sending in enough stuff for me to really worry about, and they're fine. They're kind of just want somebody to watch their back. That's what we're doing. IT help desk. Whereas the bigger customers that I have, they're the ones like the call before this was a cadence call that's normally bi-weekly, but for the month of January, just to play catch up because I got a new employee, we're going every week. And we're going through a bunch of stuff, and it's my job to run and maintain and ensure that the internal IT of that company is doing what they're supposed to be doing and providing support for it. And I charge them a nice hefty fee for that.
Mm-hmm.
So that I think is allowed as long as, to your point, you're doing the work. It doesn't always, I don't agree with it always has to be bringing them technology that will help them move forward. Sometimes it could just be, what's all the stuff that your team is complaining about that they haven't told us, or where can we increase productivity because of something that hasn't been brought to our attention. So like I think those cadence calls, and we're kind of a little off topic, but I think those cadence calls definitely can help bring about other pieces, but you definitely should be having them, and you definitely should be charged.
Let's talk about AI. So, and this is way off topic, and I'm just going to put my last little 2 cents in on this. Let's talk about AI. Let's say that you provided AI. We're talking about value and things that are improving. Should you get a percentage of the value that you've generated or the cost savings that you've delivered? Let's say the AI comes in, you provide it to your client because that's something that MSPs do now. You provide it to your client and it eliminates positions. Should you be asking for the salary with the removal of those positions? I don't. My answer is no.
For them, whether as a line item or as part of the per device pricing.
Right, because there's real work involved. And so you have to capture the cost of that real work someplace. And especially since it's probably done by you, the owner, or more senior people on your team, it is more expensive work. And you've got to capture that somewhere, whether it's line item or whether it's included in the per user pricing. I don't care as long as it's being captured and as long as your clients are good with it. I personally prefer to keep invoices simple.
I do too. I want to go back though. Let's go back to Carl. We all love Carl. There's nothing wrong with Carl. We all love Carl. His original MSP in a month book that came out in, insert the year here.
It's right back there on that shelf.
I think I have it in my bookshelf over there. Said you should have 3 pricing structures: good, better, best. Do we still feel like that's necessary today?
This is such a debated question, right? If you understand the psychology behind good, better, best, it's a good practice because you can always get them to land on the better.
I will stop here. As someone who has a pretty strong background in psychology, this is how people understand it, but it has a lot of holes in it, and it actually isn't, from a psychological perspective, a good idea on any level. Essentially, the idea behind, and probably what he's about to say is, you give them three, and because they don't want to be the most expensive, but they also don't want to be the cheapest, they become the middle. The problem is, the more options you give someone psychologically, the less satisfied they are with the one they choose. And then we have choice theory, which is, I'm not even going to get into that at this point, but choice theory is a very strong idea of how people make choices. There's a ton of literature out there that it's worth reading. But the other thing that isn't, let's just go on a little bit more, and I'll add more later.
Yeah.
Which is what you want them to do. But there's a lot of psychology and a lot of stuff that goes into that, and you have to understand it to be able to use it properly. I think that my personal preference is to be a little more bespoke than that, because I want a specific solution for a specific client. However, I don't want to go crazy and have a lot of different tech stack to deliver that bespoke solution.
I agree with that.
And so what I want to try and do is provide somewhat of a unique experience for each client based on their needs, but use it with the same underlying tech stack. Because if I can do that, I don't have to change my pricing very much from client to client.
And you don't have to retrain your staff on all these new tools.
Correct.
I'm all for minimal tool set. Like, we're having a debate right now internally at Virtua about a potential new customer who needs a level of compliancy that we've never done before, and whether or not the tools we have can do it, or do we need to go get another tool? And the person who's making this pitch to us is like, no, they need all these other things. And I'm like, I don't want to buy those things. I may rather not have the customer than have to go and buy all of these new tools and have my team learn all this stuff when everyone else fits into my playground that I already have. Why do I need to have this outlier who needs 17 new things? Because having all those tools is basically death by 1,000 cuts.
One thing also to consider, if you have good, better, best, A, B, C options, if they're taking the first layer of that, the first level, the good, are you good with them taking that? Is it so lacking in security mechanisms that it actually becomes a risk for you? The one thing I tell people about managed services, if you provide someone with that good package, and next thing you know, 6 months later, they get compromised because they didn't buy the better or best from you, they have a real big problem. You're helping them, but then they're talking to people too. And someone finds out that they were compromised, and they're like, well, who do you use for your IT? And they tell them your company name. Well, that person's going to be like, I'm never going to use them. They're not protecting anyone. But what your client didn't tell them was, well, I took their poorest option. This is a no. You need one standard that you can believe in, and then you need to leave it there. And then you evaluate your clients or your prospects coming for that. And if they aren't a good fit for that, that's fine. You can shake hands and move on. Like, we've got to be selective about who we're offering to. And having a good, better, best gives the ability for you to get cheap clients that are going to probably wreck your P&L. They're probably going to cause you more problems, burden you with help desk tickets. It's our clients with the highest invoices are the least that we hear. The ones that are the cheapest, those are the ones that we hear the most. So not only is it a bad idea for good, better, best from a psychological perspective, it's not a good idea. But also the outcome of that is you have to recognize the people that you want are the focal point of what you want, and you build your services around them, and then you allow others to walk away.
Because no one will ever learn it. So I agree with you on the fit them into the tools that you have. On the good, better, best, there is also a separate sort of mentality around it, which is like the difference between good and better might be a $5 or $10 per device pricing, and best would be $100 difference from better, right? That way you kind of land them in the better. Or you can do it the other way around. Good to better is $100, and then better to best is $10. This
Not to be good or bad, this is what people do, but they find a way to put pricing in a certain way to nudge them in a certain way. Just be really direct. It's my opinion. Be really direct about your pricing. This is what it costs. You ready to sign up? Ask the question. Trying to adjust it, it's kind of reminds me of like the rollback of Walmart, and it's just trying to adjust the price to where it makes people want to go buy it, versus just prove your value. Tell them what you stand for, tell them who you're looking for, tell them what they're getting from your company, why you're unique, and then give them the price and let it be from there.
way you can get them always into best. There's like some math to figure this out. I forget what.
Yeah, there is.
It's why you always buy the large popcorn at the movie theater for a quarter more or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
But you have to be able to define those things. And I agree with you on like the bespoke part. Like we have two plans. We have pro, we have premium, right? Pro is you get monitoring, software updates, and inventory, and everything else is a la carte, and you're going to pay by the hour. And premium includes all of, or a good portion of our a la carte stuff and unlimited billing. But our premium is it's more than 2x our pro plan. It's like 2.3 or 2.35x our pro plan. So we're baking our hours into it.
Mm-hmm.
There are clients who are going to be budget conscious, and I say, sure, go with the pro plan. Be budget conscious. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Just know that like when you tell people things, they're going to need to reach out to us. You're going to get billed by the hour. And if they don't tell us, we can't fix it. Like that's the kicker with that particular plan is like people won't, I tend to sell it on the fact that people won't reach out to us as much if they know they have to pay for our support than if they go with the premium plan, which usually is where I want people to be anyway, and it locks it into them. So there is a lot of psychology in that sale process for sure.
Yeah, and there's no problem with having multiple levels, although you can get crazy with it, right? I think 3 is probably the logical limit.
Right.
I think the important part there is to have a baseline, stick to that baseline. Anybody who wants to go below that baseline is not a customer that you want.
100%.
Give them to somebody else whose baseline is lower, right? And look, I'm not going to tell you how to run your business. If you want to have a low baseline, especially when it comes to security, that's your risk.
That's fine. Don't forget, there's MSPs who do home users or two-person offices. They don't need, not that they don't need, but they don't have such high requirements as a medical practice. So it's fine. Yeah.
And so I think that there's a way to do it that makes sense so that you can keep those clients within the bounds of the tech stack that you want to deliver and still create a solution for the client. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
I think there are ways. We don't serve the same package. Now, we have a same standard package, but there are dynamics that we allow for shifting in that could create the idea that we have multiple versions. We like to meet our clients where they are to some degree, but security is not negotiable for us. So there are certain times when maybe they want managed services but they don't want the support because they have an internal team and we just manage the security or the patching, things of that nature, whatever solutions we're delivering. So we will go in and adjust our strategy of pricing. And this is why pricing is required as a strategy, that you understand how you create it so that you can use them like Legos and pull certain things out in certain circumstances. So for example, they say, hey, all support's going to come to our internal team. We just need you to help manage the security solutions. Great. So we'll go into our pricing strategy. We'll pull out support time, and then we'll offer that. And then we'll do in the agreement, it'll just say if they reach out to us, we bill by the hour. It doesn't always happen. Very rarely does it when you have internal teams, but there are ways to it's not we only deliver one thing and that's it. We are flexible. We just aren't flexible on security solutions. If you want to do your own support, don't care. You want us to do it? cool, we're going to bill for it. There's a price for that. But when it comes to, varying, whether you use antivirus or not, or whether you use email security or not, whether you use DNS management, whether you're monitoring for SPF, DKIM, DMARC things or not, those things, no, they're not negotiable.
I get it. Look, there's, at the end of the day, and I said this in the beginning of the episode, there is no 100% right way to bill for our services. This isn't like you're coming and you're fixing a thing and you have a set, $60 an hour fee, and no matter what the problem is, and you come and you go, right? There's a lot of nuance here because it depends on your customers, it depends on your skills, it depends on on those customers' needs. It depends on your tool set. It depends on so many different, your location also. Like what I do in New York, price is different than what somebody I know does in Nebraska. You know what I mean? And when I get customers.
So I would have one caveat with that. I don't think the prices are any different. When you talk about like the cost of an EDR solution, it's not any different from one place to another. Whether you negotiate, it's a different story, or whether you have large quantity buys, so you're buying 1,000 versus 20, that's different. But the pricing for what you deliver is always pretty consistent across the US. The only caveat is support. And like I talk about in Profit by Time, you have to associate the support cost built into your agreements by the true labor of that person. So if you're in LA, they're more expensive. Your agreement should be more expensive. If you are in, Central Kentucky, like I am, there's a rate for that. You definitely have to associate to that. That's what ends up driving the cost differentiation from one place to another. But we have found that our prices work really, really well in all kinds of places. Like it doesn't even matter. There is a difference, but it's generally speaking associated to cost of support time or to staffing.
Customers from Nebraska who call us, I'm like, by the way, we have New York pricing. They get scared. So like there's so much nuance to this. I think at the end of the day, pricing needs to be easy for you to explain to the customer. It needs to cover your cost of goods, your COGS, your back-end software, your labor costs, and make profit. I think pricing needs to be, I think you need to set yourself which tools you're going to use so that way your team can handle all of that stuff and be as efficient as possible, because your efficiency breeds productivity for the customer. And I think if you really want to get away with trying to charge for productivity, go for it. Tell me a better solution. But also, like you said, bake a couple bucks into your hourly or your monthly or a line item for cadence calls and provide solutions, because you want to get in with the business. I think one of the biggest lines, and I want to wrap a little bit on this, is MSPs love to say, I want to be your business partner, right? I want to be partner. We're in business together, but you're not doing anything to help the business. You're just providing support for their staff to be able to do their jobs. And while you might say that helps the business, you're not helping grow their business. You're just helping the business maintain itself. And that's not necessarily what a business partner does. So if you want to be in business with somebody, you do need to be able to provide them solutions like figuring out the newest AI. What's a security compliance thing that's going to be happening in the next year or two that you want to make sure that they're going to be on top of? What's a better way to do a particular thing? Can you remove one service and integrate it into another one? Like we're pulling people off of one particular VoIP provider and putting them into another one because, well, the new one is Zoom phones because they're already on Zoom anyway. Let's just add it into your thing. That way you don't have to have two apps open. You have one app open. Save you a click. Can I save you a click? Is really what it is, right? Make money on saving clicks. But yeah, at the end of the day, I really don't feel like there is a solution, a holistic solution for everyone. There just isn't.
No.
It's just the way it is. And anyone who tells you that there is lying.
Yeah, because it depends on the business model, right? And I think what you just pointed out is there are three buckets of kind of services that I think an MSP should be looking at providing for their clients, and they're going to bill differently based on which ones they provide. That's going to be the CIO role, the CISO role for security and compliance,
Mm-hmm.
and then the CTO role for leveraging new technologies. And I will end my part of this by saying there's one tactical thing that if I could get every MSP to do this, it's amazing how much it makes your life easier. Whatever your pricing model, there should be an extra 5 to 10% in there so that you can swap tools or add tools at any point in the contract and not have to worry about changing their pricing until their next renewal.
That's good. I like that. Well,
So I would agree you could add a percentage for tool variants, but profoundly enough, we found that oftentimes we get price decreasing more than we get price increasing. But I wouldn't agree that doing that for adding services per se. We have evolved from one particular email security to another. In doing so, we've offered that, and that is a standard for how we function. We don't deal with that with a pricing perspective. We charge them for the services they have. And then when we have something new, because we've evolved, we offer that to them at a discounted rate at the first point. If they choose not to take it, that's fine. We don't force it upon them. But when they ask for it or when we upgrade them later, it comes at the normal price. That's for new solutions. And I think that's that should be a staple for how you handle that.
in there.
So I want to wrap this. This is the end of this video. I think when it comes to pricing, the core, as I've said a number of times, has to be that for every dollar that goes out of the organization from a deliverable perspective, an expense has to come back with buddies. Now, there isn't a way. There's not a perfect way to do this. There's multiple ways you can do that. But I think if you maintain the core of that and ensuring that every dollar going out comes back with friends, with buddies, with multiple buddies, not just two, but multiple, you'll find that you're going to be locked down to a single thing, and that is you're going to serve a fee for users. You're going to serve a fee for workstations, maybe for servers. You're going to have either site for network equipment, or you're going to charge on the firewall. You're going to charge on maybe pairs of access points, pairs of network switches, and then anything that doesn't fit into one of those categories, you separate out. So, for example, if you're using a phishing solution that is a 1 to 10, or you're selling cybersecurity training and it's 1 to 10, 11 to 20, and so forth, you pull those out separately, because you have to make sure every dollar of expense generates revenue. And if I can help with any more with that, feel free to reach out to me, Craig at craigwiller.com, or my website, which is craigwiller.com. Would love to discuss it with you. There's enough meat on this bone that they've delivered. It's incredibly invaluable. Definitely think you should heed to their advice. But I also think if you haven't already, go over to All Things MSP and make sure you subscribe to their YouTube channel. They also present that through a podcast version through most of your Spotify and your Apple apps. But make sure to give them a like, a follow, and maybe even comment on their content. Until next time, take care.